everybody, this is Tiffany, the Divine Misfit here. So I'm here to give my video about breaking the patterns from toxic relationships. Before we get started, I'm just gonna be rambling, so if you just want to skip through this and just get to the heart of the video, the timestamp will be in the description and both in the pinned comments. So before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to my 2 new subscribers. Again, thank you so much. I know I haven't been posting lately. Again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all the love and support and for everything. Honestly, your guys' likes and subscriptions just really make my day. And also, it keeps reminding me that I really gotta get back on it. I've just been taking a break from YouTube, and also for all those who are starting their YouTube journey, it's the very beginning of your YouTube channel where it just feels like you plateau and you just procrastinate, or you just hit a stagnation, and it's like I keep putting things out there and no one wants to see it. So I feel like I hit that part in my YouTube journey, but I will be getting back into videos. So starting with today, we'll be talking about breaking patterns in toxic relationships. And also to just future reference, I have a couple of videos I want to do. I want to get back into like spooky tarot readings again. So I'll be doing that in the near time future. And I could put a poll up if you guys are interested. One of the topics I want to talk about is the Oku doll. It's a haunted doll from Japan. And another one that I have coming up is a pastime reading that I've done about Solomon Northup, and I'm just going to quickly glance through it. Just if anyone's not aware or doesn't know the history, Solomon Northup was a real person who was a freed man. He lived in Saratoga, New York, and the movie 12 Years a Slave from 2012, I believe, is from his book. And he was from his book, he talked about meeting with 2 men. And they were saying that, oh, you can get this and get that and get money. And they drugged him. And then when he woke up in a slave dungeon. And he learned that he was sold and kidnapped into slavery. And my reading, or my past reading, is going to be about not particularly what happened during his time of enslavement, but because at the end, in those times, unfortunately, a black man or anyone who was black in a free state couldn't testify against whites. And so there was a little mystery behind his disappearance, although it has been recorded that he was in the abolitionist movement and he spoke against slavery, and he actually helped on the Underground Railroad. And I don't think many people know about his story or really know too much about him, so that's going to be in another future video coming up soon. So now, enough with the rambling, here I am. So I will be honest, when I made this video, or I was thinking of making this video, I've been putting off, but I spoke with an esthetician of mine, and she inspired me to make these videos, and it made me realize that anything that I put out there, whether people glance through or not, it affects people, and I feel like I need to get back on that. So again, as you probably saw by the thumbnail, what this video is going to be about. So this is about breaking the pattern in toxic relationships. So I am going to be talking about my experiences and how I personally broke the pattern of why I got into these relationships. And I just want to make a disclaimer that doing any type of internal work is never going to, like, you are never ever going to be completely healed. There's no time frame that when you go to therapy, you're healed and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. No, healing is an ongoing, every single day, waking moment of your life. It takes a lot of effort, and also it takes work. But the real work is about doing the things that are super uncomfortable for you. And so just because, I just want to give a disclaimer, and I'm not trying to disclose therapy. I welcome therapy. Therapy is an amazing tool. But just because you go to therapy and you do this work, the real test will come when you're in a relationship, because those old triggers and those old wounds are going to come. But it all matters on how you handle those triggers and those wounds to regulate yourself. Okay, so with that said, personally me, I always thought toxicity was love. So growing up, my family dynamic was this, that my father always had the say. Whatever he said went. And if you didn't listen, there was hell to pay. And my mom is a very soft-spoken person. She's not really a confrontational person. She's not really someone who is super direct. She's very soft in her approach, where I feel like I get that from. And my mom often kept quiet. I never really saw her spoke up against my dad. And the way that things were in our toxic household, I'm sorry, excuse me a second. I'm like recording this in my car. Okay, sorry about that. So in our household, feelings were just never talked about. Whatever happened, you just let it go. We never spoke about it. And whenever my dad would say something to us, I always just absorbed it and just took it as like, that's what you're supposed to do. And I was always taught that as a child, you're never allowed to talk back to your parents. And I remember I've always had a hard time speaking up, because talking about feelings just always felt uncomfortable, and I could beat around the bush. And so I had anger, like so much anger, that I didn't want to be anything like my parents. But then I realized that I was becoming my parents, either one extreme or the other. If I was in a relationship with someone who was more direct and more dominant, I would be submissive like my mother. But if I was with someone who was more submissive and someone who was more soft-spoken, I felt I became the asshole. And I became the dominant one, and I would be the one that would talk down to you. But then I remember a lot of my relationships came from, not because I didn't like the person, even though sometimes genuinely I did have a crush on the person, but a lot of times I just chose people because they were giving me attention. And I liked it. And in my household too, when I was in high school, I really felt like the toxicity was so bad. I was just used to my father just speaking to my sister and I with disrespect, calling us really hurtful things, and always projecting that we were idiots. And I took that as truth. But then in my time too, growing up, I've always just took what people said to me and took it as truth. And I've never been the kind of person who's very confrontational, or someone who is extremely direct. And I've never been someone who's petty. I have to, it's my way or the highway. And so when people would say things to me, I would just take it and not say anything. But then it would just I would just be in my head, and then it would just become anger and anger and anger about what I wish I said and what I could have done. But I would freeze. And then my first relationship was when I was in high school. Again, I went with this person because I liked the attention I was getting, but then also I liked it because I felt like I was getting loved, and I felt like I was looking for a father figure in my relationships. And little would I know, in my healing journey, I would also be looking for a mother in my ex's family. So anytime I noticed red flags, I would ignore them, or I would dismiss my own intuition. I'm going through, like, in my head. So a lot of the times I chose men that were emotionally unavailable because that's what felt familiar to me and that's what felt comfortable to me. But I wouldn't know that until, like, I get older. And going back, in my first relationship when I was in high school, I was 14 years old, and I felt that a relationship was all like, oh, we love each other, and but it never made me realize of, like, what went into a relationship. So when it came to feelings, and so I noticed I would always push away my feelings, and I always had a hard time showing any type of vulnerability, whether it was like telling you, hey, that hurt my feelings, or hey, that made me sad, or hey, that made me upset that you said that, and I don't like you speaking to me that way, etc. And I remember he told me that he liked another girl before me, and I wouldn't be able to let it go, and I always kept talking about it because I felt like that was like it would jab at my self-worth. And when we were together, his mom took him to a school in Nevada. It's called Job Corp. And so we were in a long distance relationship, and we would just write each other letters. But I did notice this pattern where sometimes, like, I would be in a relationship with someone and they would end up, like, being far away because it felt comfortable being with someone who wasn't there, even though I longed for them. And when that relationship ended, I never was upfront about my feelings, because I did notice that when he came back, there was a distance between us, that we grew apart. But I never told him that. I just broke up with him. And then he probably felt confused, but then he told me that he liked somebody else after me. And I felt, that I was indisposable. I felt that I was expendable. And instead of confronting those feelings, I would move on to somebody else. And as I later got older, I would be into hooking up with people because I felt that that was my way of getting love from men. And also too, I felt that that was my way of, like, feeling that was my worth. I had a lot of toxic shame around my sexuality, and I feel like I used that to try to gain love and acceptance from men. But in the process, I would be disrespected because of, like, how the toxic shame, and then back in the early 2000s too, with the patriarchy and, like, that bullcrap, how I would be labeled a whore. And hopefully the YouTube allows this, so don't get mad at me, YouTube. But so I'm just gonna be very completely honest here. And with this other relationship I was in, I remember I met him at a rave. he was a promoter. But like, same thing, he would be super far away and we only like texted, and that was our relationship, and he broke up with me. And even though I felt the bare minimum was what I deserved, but I wouldn't know that until later. And when I was 18 years old, I remember there was this guy that was in the military that I ended up really liking. And even though I knew that he didn't like me, I still tried to pursue because I wanted him to see my worth. And I'm just gonna fast forward to my next one, which was I was 18. I think I was 18 again. Yeah, I was 18. And I moved from Fontana to LA at the time. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So I moved from Fontana to LA, and I was going to a medical assisting school. At the time, I thought that was the career I wanted to be in. And I was just so used, way before any of this, I saw that I would always constantly get bullied, and I would never either say anything or fight back, because that's honestly the kind of person I am. I'm just not a violent, confrontational person like that. And I wouldn't take it because in my childhood, you know, being bullied by my sibling, and then also being talked down to by my father, and being dismissed and having my emotions and needs neglected, that felt normal to me. But little would I know, I would just take it as like I deserve to be disrespected. I know better now, but then I used to take bullying as like I deserved it, even though I knew I didn't like it. I didn't feel good, but it just felt familiar. And so I was getting bullied by these girls, where I'm the kind of person that if you ask me for gum, I'll give you a piece. So they would ask me, but it was a constant everyday thing. And then they would ask me for answers on the homework, and I'd be cool. I'm like, yeah, here. But it was an everyday occurrence. And then I noticed that they wouldn't want to hang out with me. They would ditch me, until I met my ex-boyfriend at the time. And I remember I never got to get to know him, but I just said yes because, again, it felt good being admired. It felt good getting that validation. So when I was in that relationship, he would talk down to me. He would disrespect me constantly by either touching other girls in front of me, or he would be very callous and blunt, like saying, oh, she's hot, or like just say like, oh, you can look but can't touch. And I always felt like I was never good enough. And then when we broke up, the same pattern, where when he left me, he liked another girl after. And I remember when I was in that relationship, what I said before, like, I would either become my mother or I would become my father. With this one, he was just very like overt, and he was from New York, so he was just very direct. But then also too, he was just very disrespectful and very callous in the things that he would say to me, and he didn't care about my feelings. I mean, he would say things that hurt my feelings, or he would make me feel like I was never good enough, that I had to be performative, and that I wanted to show him my worth, that I was a good girl, and that I would tell him like, oh, I would never do this to you. And he talked about like how his girlfriend before me cheated on him. And so I wanted to prove to him that I was a good girl. So anytime that he would say something to me, I would just take it. I would always constantly bring up like him touching other girls, but he would just say, it's my personality. And when that relationship ended, because I don't really want to get into the details, but I'm just getting into like what I noticed the pattern. So after I got out of that relationship, again, I was sad. But yes, I did try to process that breakup. But then I met another guy after this relationship. And you know, he was the opposite. Like, he would shower me with love, and he would try to make me feel like, oh, I love you, I like you, and like, but there was something about him that I felt like he wouldn't stand up for himself, and there was something about him that made him feel like it was like he was a pushover. But then I felt like I became my ex-boyfriend, but to him. And there was a lot of back and forth, not like breaking up, but like arguing. And now how we broke up, it's a very heavy topic. I don't feel ready to say it on YouTube, but pretty much it had to do with like a very traumatic time in my life, and I was slut shamed for it. He basically said to me that, do you think it's because of what you were wearing? And then I said, what does that have to do with anything? And he said to me that basically about if you wear something to a man, that whether it's cleavage or legs, he'll be attracted to it. And I forgot how he worded it, but something like that. And then he said to me, if I didn't know who you were, I would think you were a slut too. And this goes into my past, where like I've been shamed and called for my own father too. I was called a whore too. And from my religious upbringing too, especially being Mormon, premarital sex is one of the biggest sins that you could do. It was compared to murder. In fact, it was actually worse than murder. And for those who don't know, my viewers, or if you are Mormon, you can relay that when you hit a certain age, they bring you into worthiness interviews, and they ask you questions like, do you keep the word of wisdom? Do you keep I forgot how they word it, but like basically if you're a virgin, like something about the law of chastity or something like that. And when you answer them, like if you say no, 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 then of course, you know, you're worthy, and then you're worthy to go to the temple. But let's just say, for example, if you were to say, I had premarital sex, they'll ask you questions about it, and then you're not able to take the sacrament, and you're not allowed to take the sacrament on Sundays. And when you don't take the sacrament, people know that you're in trouble for something. And in the religion, it's taught that your body belongs to your husband, that your body isn't your own. And that basically, I wasn't taught this when I was in church, but I have heard some people have gotten the object lessons where like, if you lost your virginity, that you were compared to a chewed up piece of gum. That, let's just say like how I'm chewing gum now. If I were to take this gum out of my mouth and give it to you, the viewer, and say, would you want it? Of course you're going to say no. They would compare as you losing your virginity to giving it to somebody else because you are not longer a virgin. Nobody's going to want you. And that you're disgusting and tainted. Although I never gotten those lessons, but also too, just from my upbringing too, in the early 2000s, where like things were like super like super misogynistic, that if a woman was this, she was a, yeah. And then if a man can do it, and it's okay. In fact, he gets called a player and like, oh, he's a man hoe, and it's not taken seriously, but yet all the blame is put on the woman. And a lot of times I have heard the slut shaming from men, but I also heard it more from women. Because I feel like women, we shame each other so much because of our internalized misogyny. But that's a different video for another day. So, going back to breaking the pattern here, so bear with me here. But yeah, just, even though, yes, when I was told that comment, obviously that made me angry and made me feel hurt. But there was some type of familiarity to it. There was another relationship, but I'm gonna skip through this because this is the main catalyst. So, I was in a relationship with someone. We were together for 3 years and 8 months, going to almost 4 years. And I met him through Facebook. And I remember, yes, I liked him. We had chemistry. And I remember I said to him that I would go to see him for his birthday. So I traveled by myself for the first time to California to Texas to see him. And at the time too, he moved to Texas. He was Californian. So he moved to Texas to live with his ex when they were together because she's Texan. And so when I met him for the first time, I had that strange inkling feeling that he wasn't good. And I'm going to say this now before I continue. To any of my viewers who are watching this or get to this far of the video, my advice to you is this: if you get any type of inkling, listen to it. It may not make sense, but it will later on. And if you don't listen, it'll be one of those hugest lessons that you're gonna go back and be like, I wish I listened. So now back to the video. So again, in that relationship, the same dynamic where I felt myself being the asshole because I felt I couldn't respect him, because I felt like I didn't get the protective feeling from him that I was looking for in a man. And this was way before my healing journey. A lot of the times my inner girl was looking for a father in all these men that I chose. And I ignored those red flags, those inklings. I ignored them because I didn't want to be alone. I ignored it because I didn't want to lose someone who was giving me that attention. And I chose to stay with him. I'm not going to get into it too much, but there was physical abuse on both sides. Not so severe on his end, but one in particular where he would grab me by the throat a couple times, and I would forgive him. And the reason why I couldn't leave him was because I didn't want to accept that we were not going to stay together. I didn't want to let him go. And I held on to things that should have been left because I just didn't want to be alone. And excuse me, bear with me. I'm trying to I'm saying this all in real time. So there was verbal abuse. I don't want to paint him as the villain because it was mutually toxic, where there was verbal abuse and emotional abuse. And I felt like with him I would be super forgiving because I loved him. But in that relationship, though, compared to the others, I didn't feel like I had to like be performative and be who I, and not be myself. Like, okay, hopefully that made sense. But like in my previous relationships, I felt like I had to be performative to be loved. Like I had to be this to prove my worth. And so he felt like my best friend. Like I could go to a grocery store. Like I remember there was a time we would go to Target because that's where he used to work, and he and I would go shopping sometimes, and I would have the funnest time with him, like even if it was like a car ride, and we would have like our own inside jokes and stuff, and we would play fight, and yeah, he felt like my best friend. But it was just very toxic, where there was a lot of like emotional manipulation on his end. And I'm gonna fast forward this. So when that relationship ended, it took me a while, and I feel like that was the main catalyst for me that sparked my healing journey. As I mentioned it before in my spirituality video, that dynamic between me and that person, it was a lot of push and pull. It was a lot of intermediate reinforcement. For those who don't know, that basically means that like they take it away and then they shower you with love. So it's like the high, the low. Think of it as like when you go to Vegas and you go to machines, and when you go on those machines, you win so much money. They're like, oh yeah, I'm winning. But then all of a sudden it like takes it away, and then you start winning again. It creates that dopamine like loop in your brain. It's so toxic, but that's what it was. And also too, there was just a lot of emotional abuse where this person got off on the fact that he would like take it away from me, like take things away from me. And then when he would come back, he would shower me with love. And then me being me, I didn't have the boundaries for myself to be like, no, I deserved better. Because truthfully, I felt like I didn't. So when that relationship ended, that part of me died that day. And I'm not saying that just to be dramatic. I really mean it. Like, I felt so broken. So broken, so heartbroken, both in here, and I just felt like I was trash. And my self-worth was at a low, the lowest of the low. And I remember I would look in the mirror sometimes and just feel so ugly. And I will share this, the reason why I say this. There was a moment in time where me and this person, my friend at the time I had, she was in contact with me, and we were like, this is when I got out of a relationship with him, and so we were reconnecting, and I was telling her about the things that he said and what he did to me. And I didn't know she was doing this, but she was going behind my back and like talking to the girl that he was interested in and saying like, hey, watch out for him, and like message my ex and like say things on his like profile and stuff. And I didn't know this, but pretty much my ex didn't want to talk to me. He would get people to try to talk to me. So finally he spoke to me, and a lot of hurtful things were said on his end. But the one part that really broke me the most was when he told me that his friends basically said that I looked old, and he told me, I don't think so. I think you're beautiful. And he said to me, they also said that you looked more like a mom than you did my girlfriend, and compared to your new girl who's really cute, what an upgrade, dude. I was silent, and I just felt my heart sink, and I felt my stomach sink. And he said, why are you so quiet? And then he basically talked about how this girl was better than me intimately, and how she pleased him intimately. And my self-worth was at the lowest of the low that you can think of. But because of that moment, it was the catalyst of what broke in me. A part of me died, but another part of me woke up. And that was the part that made me look inward to see my patterns. And this is what this video is about. I've learned in my previous relationships that either A... Alright, I apologize. I had an interruption, but where was I? So I learned from my previous relationships that from the men that I chose were actually a mirror of what I grew up with. So I grew up with emotionally unavailable parents. And I grew up with emotionally unavailable dad. And also, too, I grew up with my mom, who was also an avoidant and also emotionally unavailable. And he was unavailable, too. And he was a big avoidant, too. And little would I know subconsciously that avoidant men just felt familiar to me. And when I did the digging in me, I thought love meant of always like trying to fix somebody. I thought love meant that you always have to prove your worth, and that your worth came from what people say to you or your validation from other people. And I used to take that love meant, well, how do I word this? Just like what I grew up with, and even not just from my mom, but like from the dynamic of my grandma too, that love meant to regulate other people, and that it was an eye-opener of my own boundaries. Because at least with this relationship, I felt like I had low boundaries with myself, that I should have never took this person back. I never should have I never should have doubted myself. And the common pattern that I saw from the men that I chose, they were either emotionally unavailable, they were emotionally or verbally abusive in one way or another. They either had daddy issues, because a lot of the boyfriends that I had didn't grow up with a father figure, or had a emotionally distant father, or they had a stepfather. And I always found myself wanting to fix the other person instead of just accepting it for what it was, because I felt that like if I try harder, they would love me, and that it was one of those like I could fix him, like he became a project. But then I felt like I was looking for a father in these men, and I felt that I didn't deserve respect. Not just like from the men I chose, but also just to like how people chose to treat me. And I always used to feel like my words had little to no meaning. And that I always felt that like who I am, like my sexuality, made me worthy or unworthy. I didn't go into this, but with this last ex that was the catalyst to all this, I remember he did mention, he didn't say overtly that I'm a hoe, but he did like indirectly call me one. But little did I know it was his way of like control and for his ego. And I kept chasing love because I just wanted to be loved. And with the one with the medical assisting school, I felt that if I just kept giving and giving and giving and giving, he'll love me and respect me. But it did the opposite. He took me for granted and he didn't respect me. With the catalyst of this ex, I felt like I repeated the pattern where like I became my father in that relationship. And so what I saw the pattern in me was this, that I chose men that were either distant physically or emotionally, and they were not able to give me the capacity, the emotional capacity that I needed to be loved. I already felt that way before this person. He opened a wound, but the wound was already there of like my sexual shaming, my self-worth issues, and then just my self-esteem was super low. And I felt that when someone showers you with love, that's beautiful. Like how do I say, like not chaos per se, but more like when someone showers you with love, it's like that's what, like, you don't go, like, I didn't feel like I really got to know the person. I just kind of went into it because I just felt happy that someone was giving me attention. I didn't feel alone, and I was looking for love. And I just always felt like internally I was just not worthy, which now I know it's the opposite. But I do want to say, what really helps break the pattern in you is when you look at yourself and the characteristics of the men or women or whatever that you're attracted to, you choose. So what I did, what helped me, was that I did an exercise where I wrote the person's name, how long we've been together, how we met, why did we break up. I went through every single person I've dated, every single person that I either had a situationship with or someone who was just a fling. And when I actually saw on paper, that's when I began to see my patterns. That I would choose, like, either I would choose men that were not capable of giving me what I needed. All right, I had to pause the video again. I had another interruption. So where was I? So I chose men that were not capable of giving me the love that I deserved and what I needed. But then also too, I remember I felt that bare minimum felt comfortable. And I was just so used to bare minimum love that I didn't know what true love, or like what healthy love is actually. And I began to see that also to the men that I chose, they had either a father, like a huge father wound, which I saw in myself, and then a mother wound, which later I would learn was in me as well. And as I began to break down those patterns of the men, that they may have changed names, they may have changed faces, but the characteristics were all the same. But I began to see that they were relatively all the same person with the same head, if you know what I mean. And once I saw the pattern, it began to confront my own wounds, which was my biggest wound was that I wanted to be loved and that I could fix people. I stayed longer than what I should have. And I had a lack of self-respect. Not self-respect of like not choosing, like, you know, sleeping around. I don't mean that kind of self-respect. The self-respect is what I allow people to treat me and how I allow others to continuously to treat me, and what I like, how I love myself, like, or lack of love for myself, and what I felt I deserved. And then in my healing journey, I feel like what broke the chain was once you see that aha moment, it becomes easier to pinpoint, like, okay, this is where I need to work on. Shadow work comes into play. And I began to see that I don't need to fix people. If I feel like I have to fix you, that alone is a boundary I need to put on myself. And I always felt, well, maybe it could work out. Maybe if I love you more. No. You don't date potential. You date what they can give you. And they date for what they can provide. And what helped me was just learning my core, again, just learning about my core wounds. Because I feel like once you learn what your core wounds are, and typically like how a lot of avoided men, how they operate, I feel like that right there can already like break the chain. And I've learned too that I need to like have boundaries within myself, and that if something becomes clear, whether it's an inkling or intuition, whatever it is, red flags is a red flag for a reason. It does not mean I can make it green if I love you more. No. That's how I was abandoning myself. And I will say, when you are on your healing journey, even though, yes, you may have targeted your wounds, but what makes it evident is a relationship, the next one that you get into. Because now you have to look at, do they have my values? Do we share the same core values? More than like, oh, I like rom-com, I like action movies, oh, this is my favorite music, or like, I like your sense of humor. You have to pick the people of what your core values are. So like, for example, mine are, I want a man who's been in therapy, who has the ability to be honest, but honesty with care, not use honesty or truth as a weapon just to say, well, it's the truth. And once I've learned about myself, and I learned, okay, I've been with men that have been avoidant. I've been with men who don't feel comfortable being in their emotions. I've been with men who can only give bare minimum. Hopefully this all makes sense. But I feel like once you find that key factor of the type of people that you date, and this is for anyone, I'm just saying men because I'm a woman and I'm attracted to men, but whether it's men or women, once you find those key like traits of what you see in every person, that's how you know where your wound is. Because it's not about them, it's about you. Because who you date is a mere reflection of yourself and a mere reflection of your wound. I am anxious attached, so I had to learn, because I always felt like, no, how can I attract avoidant men? Something in me already was in me to subconsciously attract these people. And it isn't just some like magical, like, oh, like you're this and you're going to attract people. No, this is all subconscious because of what you're programmed and conditioned to think. And that's the key word here, is conditioning. And once you like find what your conditioning is, the biggest key to help break the pattern is to do the shadow work. It's going to be very uncomfortable, but once you learn to see your shadow and love your shadow, because your shadow is you. Your shadow is your inner child needs. And also to go with the video, what has helped me to break that pattern too is realizing that my inner child needed the mother and the father that I didn't get. That I had to be the mother and father that my little girl needed. Because my little girl thought that love meant from like how people valued you and how people get what people gave you. My little girl didn't trust me. I didn't even trust myself. I had so much negative thoughts about myself. But I feel like once you see that, that is the key in breaking your pattern. So, the main takeaway of this is it's going to take a lot of work. But I promise, once you find those things in you, you're now picking people with intention. Instead of like, oh, I think you're cute, or oh, I think he's like, oh, he's gorgeous, you know? It's more than are we compatible? Do we share the same core values? Can I see you with me 10 years down the line? How are you going to handle when you get triggered? How am I going to handle when I get triggered? How can we work together? And what can we do to make sure that when we're triggered, we know what to do to help with our conflict resolution? And I always felt too that I've always attracted people that were either overtly blunt or overtly dominant. And I used to think that's what I felt like that's what the key, because when you think people who are assertive, they tend to get more favor, because as humans, it's part of our nature. Hopefully if I could word this right, that when we see people who are more assertive, it's attractive that they can handle themselves and they could basically they have a backbone. And there's nothing wrong with being assertive, I'm just putting it out there. But what I mean is that when, in my case, I confuse healthy assertion to toxic, in my case, masculinity, and toxic femininity. That's where I confused the two. And growing up too with my father, I've always had just like examples of what toxic masculinity is. And of course, I didn't want to date anyone who's anywhere near like anything like my father. But I found out that from this, like from my introspection, I either dated someone who had traits like my father or resembled my own projection of my own father and my upbringing. So again, if I'm kind of going on a tangent here, so to break the chain of toxic relationships is doing the work. No ifs, ands, or buts. There's no way. Because if you're not aware of your own wounds, this will continue and continue and continue until you yourself make the choice that you want to change. And I'm a huge believer people can change, but they have to want to change first. And I'm going to leave this here. So again, for everybody who has came to this video and watched all the way through, again, thank you so much. Thank you for all the love and support. May you have a beautiful, blessed day, and take care. And I love you. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.